Hi, and welcome to Life Addictions, the Recovery Show. My name is John Laus, and I am a certified recovery specialist. Today on the show, we're going to talk about life addictions. And if you're a viewer and you know somebody that's either been through an addiction or is currently going through one, this show could be a life-saving thing for them. So please stay tuned and watch. Today we have a very special guest. We've had a lot of very special guests, and Paul Effron is another one in the line that's a professional in the addiction recovery field. Paul Effron, introduce yourselves. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Good morning, John. First of all, it's a privilege and a blessing to be here this morning. I was supposed to come on here many different times, and scheduling always changed. The only thing that John's going to find out today, and the audience, I don't know the agenda for today's show. It may be about addiction, it may not. I know that there's so much going on in the recovery field right now. So many, as they're studying addiction, which is such a killer, and it's just decimated society, which we all know, those of us involved in and around addiction and addiction treatment, and being recovery coaches and interventionists. So as it's evolving, everyone is looking for new answers to stop burying as many people as we've been burying.
Now, Paul, you've been around many, many years. Give us a little background about your career, because I've met you at a conference in the Fort Lauderdale area. And tell us a little bit about your background.
I certainly will. It's actually, the way I like to say it, I'm from New York, in case anyone has a hearing problem, but
right, you're a big East Coast guy, New York, South Florida.
South Florida, but any coast will do.
Yeah.
But what happened is I'm a product of the '60s.
Yeah.
And I'm from New York City, Queens, New York. And in 1965, I was 17, as that song by Jackson Browne goes.
Right.
65, I was 17. 69, I was 21. And the Beatles came to Shea Stadium in 1965. My friends and I stormed the fences. I woke up 15 years later. That's the best I can tell you.
Gotcha. And you turned into a counselor back then?
No. 15 years later, I went to every institution in the greater metropolitan area, jails, mental hospitals, rehab centers, everything,
So you went through the ringer in addiction.
Big time.
And
I got very blessed. When I got thrown out of New York, I came to Florida, and there were a bunch of new things going on in the field of addiction, and I was turned on to them, and my life turned around. I believe it was some divine intervention in a non-religious way. I was introduced to a bunch of guys and women, and my life has taken a totally different course.
So Paul has seen the face of addiction in many different forms. Paul, I remember talking to you once, and you said you actually founded some of the current day 12-step programs, or were instrumental in creating some of the first meetings. Tell us a little bit about that, my audience.
Well, I don't know how big your audience is, John, but whether it's 1 or 2 million, one thing that I've been very sensitive about in my journey is anonymity, on many levels. And the one thing I will say to you is that 12-step programs are phenomenal.
Yeah.
Which is why there's 100 and some odd 12-step programs around. And what they're finding out is there are many other avenues to help a person in addition to the 12-step programs. Many people will get on and say, I go to Narcotics Anonymous, or I go. And whether I do or don't is not really the issue. The issue is, or the answer is that I was given an answer.
Yeah.
I found an answer by the grace of God. I haven't had to pick up a chemical of any kind in 31 plus years.
You touch on a very sensitive topic for those that do attend, and that's the question of anonymity. keeping your personal life personal as far as it relates to addiction and recovery, and whether a person is or is not in a said program, or talk to us a little bit about that. Not from your just in general.
That's something that I have spoken to many people, many of my mentors about, and many people in different avenues that have recovered from terrible places, very much like my own. And actually, this last week or two, there's a website, and somebody on that website had an article about, is anonymity really pertinent any longer in this day and age?
Right.
Because of all the...
That's a good article.
Well, did you read it?
I didn't read it,
Okay.
but tell us a little bit about it.
I'm going to tell you about it, because it was written by this woman, Susan Cheever, who wrote the book, My Name is Bill, about the co-founder of Alcoholics Anonymous, Bill Wilson.
Right.
And she wrote the book just, all about him and his life, and the good and the bad, and she's a good writer. And so she had submitted this article basically saying that, that was 1935 when these steps and these traditions were written for all of these 12-step programs. And now, in 2011, perhaps because of all the notoriety, because if you look what's happened, not like an internet show like this necessarily, because I don't know how many people are watching this, other than your wife, and my wife, I'll tell her when it's on.
Right.
But the reality is, every television show, every movie. I was just in California last week, or 2 weeks ago, in Palm Desert, California, because one of the things I do is interventions for people that are having problems with addiction. And there was an intervention conference in Palm Desert, California. There were 800 of the top interventionists all over the country and the world.
Okay.
And the reality is, there was so much publicity around it, and many of these people are breaking their anonymity.
Right.
Saying, my name is John, and I'm an addict and alcoholic, and so the traditions, or the 11th tradition, which says that our personal anonymity must always be maintained at the level of press, radio, and films. And in this day and age, that includes the internet, in my opinion.
That's right.
Doesn't mean I'm right or wrong. It's just something that has sort of torn me asunder on a personal level, okay?
I think personally the stigma of addiction is still there. But it's been so worse, back when it first started, the 60s, the 70s. But more and more it's coming out of the closet. I mean, a lot of people get addicted to various things. And, let's talk about current events. There's, people in the news that are always out there. And in my opinion, I think it's a good thing that people are seeing the face of addiction, whether it's through alcohol, whether it's through a behavioral addiction. It brings to light, it brings out from the back room this thing that, we keep,
Well, no, and that's certainly a school of thought.
Yeah.
Okay? And it's certainly becoming more prominent a school of thought, as evidenced by the fact that for an entire 2-month period, you couldn't turn on any television or boot up any computer without seeing Charlie Sheen's name there.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
And the sad part about that is that people, because they love watching train wrecks, were doing the viewing and the winner, and all that. Well, this guy's killing himself.
Right.
Okay, so, and with the Paris Hiltons and the Lindsay Lohans and everything, because it's become so celebrity-based.
Yeah.
Okay? Because people have overtly said, I'm in recovery, this is what I do, and then you have the famous people that are getting, out there, quite frankly, at this conference, was Betty Ford said to people.
Yeah.
And Betty Ford was a leader, of coming out of the closet.
Right.
And opened up this thing and broke her anonymity. And that's wonderful. I'm still not too certain. See, because there's another tradition that talks about lest problems of money, property, or prestige divert us from our primary purpose. And there's another part of the AA and NA philosophy that it's a program of attraction, not promotion. Okay, and somehow I believe that this power is going to direct everyone and anyone to where they're going to be and supposed to be, because all you have to do is look that in 1939, when the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous was first written, the recovery rate was something like 75%. And in 2011, the published recovery rate is somewhere between 5 and 10%.
You know,
so what has happened?
That's interesting you mention that. The recovery rate in AA, in the 12-step programs, is 5%. That's
the latest figure.
That's the latest
figure.
I
didn't write it. You know.
Why do you think it's so low?
And that's
is it because people don't use it? Like, I've got a product,
okay,
and I've said this a couple times during the shows. You know, I sell my product to rehabs, to individuals, but I sold my one product to a lady for her daughter. She called me up 6 months later. She says, "I want my money back. It doesn't work." And I'm like, "Okay, well, tell me a little bit about, did she use it?" She goes, "No, it's still in the package. We haven't even opened it."
Right.
So the 12-step program, I hear that it works if you use it. If you go to meetings, if you interact with people, if you seek out support, it really does work. Now, is this 5% people that go maybe once, or people that go maybe for 3-4 months?
Before I start getting slammed by however large your listening audience is, since I just created that figure, but I think it is 5%.
It is 5. No,
it is. You're agreeing.
Yeah.
Okay, good. So the answer that I have, which is just my answer, doesn't mean it's the answer, is related to what I was talking about earlier. In the last 30 years, you've had the advent of the explosion of not recovery necessarily, but the recovery industry. Your drug iPod, the people that are doing biofeedback, EMDR, QSRP, a treatment center or halfway house or sober living or transitional living or sober coach or life coach or interventionist or re-interventionist, all of these fields have been created in the last 30 years.
Right.
Okay, so now if we follow this along...
And it's a great thing, let me tell you, because the road to recovery, we need more of them.
Well, possibly and possibly not. So at least people will know after this thing that you don't pay me to be on here, because I'm allowed to disagree, right, or disagree without hopefully being disagreeable. What I'm just looking at is the figures. And one of the main reasons that I believe, just my belief, that the recovery rate has dramatically declined in the last, since the early days, is because people now, with all of these treatment centers and all of these things, and this mother who called you about her daughter, who might be 17 and might have caught smoking pot one night in her room, the mother says, "Oh my God, my daughter's a drug addict, let me get the recovery pod." Or, "Oh my God, the daughter's a drug addict, let me send her to rehab." Or, "Oh my God, the daughter's a drug addict, I've got to go into some therapy."
Paul, why is the recovery rate so low? And that's the question.
The desperation is lacking.
The desperation is lacking. That's a good answer. The desperation is lacking.
In other words, what I had when I finally got to that moment...
I like that answer. That's a good answer.
Well, one of my mentors said to me many, many years ago, God rest his soul, and he congratulated me that when he met me, I had the gift of desperation.
Yeah.
And then I found out many years later that the gift of desperation stood for G-O-D. Okay?
Right.
And that was where, and that's going to sort of segue into this thing that I had wanted to talk about today. And then we'll get back to that in a minute. But the key is that if somebody's pushing someone because they're uncomfortable with the person's actions, well, you'll get that type of results. If a person on their own, through many life tragedies, is finally at that point where they're sick and tired of being sick and tired, they can't go on another minute, they can't conceive, how did this happen? and then they seek out help on their own, I believe that their chance of getting clean, of staying clean, is much greater because their willingness to do whatever it takes is much greater than someone who smoked pot a couple of nights.
You know, you touched on something, and that's the gift of desperation. And a lot, we got a lot of viewers out there. We got about 30 to 40,000 viewers that watch, and a lot of them have family members. A lot of them have friends that are touched by addiction, whether that's been in the past or currently. But desperation. A person doesn't get desperation if they're constantly enabled. A lot of our viewers, a lot of people around the world enable their loved ones, and they never let them have that gift of desperation. I mean, to get desperate, you really have to be cut off. That's what interventionalists do. If you ever watch a show, Interventionalists, they tell family members, cut them off. That's it. They've got no other choice. You either go to rehab, you go to jail, or we're not going to finance you. We're kicking you out of the house. That's the gift of desperation, and to cut off the enabling, process is one of the keys, isn't it?
Absolutely, but there again, you touched on the piece that I was bringing out when you brought about the show intervention.
Yeah,
Dr. Drew, Dr. Phil.
Right.
In other words, these are all profit-making entities.
Yeah.
Lest problems of money, property, or prestige divert us from our primary purpose, which is just helping the addict or alcoholic that still suffers. I wanted to bring up this one topic that off the radar, and then I can come back next week or whatever.
Go ahead, bring it up. You got a book here?
Yeah, very exciting. I don't know if you can get in on that. This is called Thank God I. That's the title of the book series. Mm-hmm. Okay? The founder of this company is a gentleman in New York named John Constantini. Okay? He's a spiritual author, guru, leader, and I'm going to tell you the short version of how I got involved with John, and perhaps if any of your readers are inspired, if you will, they can reach out to me through this website, because here's what it is. John and I met last year at a book fair in East Hampton, Long Island, and he was one of the books being displayed. I went over and saw this book. My wife dragged me to see him. And what this is, the short version, every one of us in this world, everyone who's watching, listening, everyone you'll ever meet, has a thank God I moment.
Right.
Whatever it is. And what this company is doing now, 4 years later, we created this 4 years ago and it's just rolling out, is embracing or helping people find that thank God I moment, to turn it into a thank God I story. Each of these stories are vignettes of 1,500 words, 5 pages, and I'll just give you or you can read. Read what they read, and then I'll tell you a little bit of the story about it.
I'll read a couple. It says, thank God I'm not an ugly duckling. Thank God I was physically abused. Thank God I went to prison. Thank God I am blind. These are all pretty depressing thank God.
Terrible. Well, hold on a second.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. And the beautiful thing about every one of these 70 stories in each book is that 3 or 4 of the pages are about the event. That I was raped, that I went to prison, that I lost my family, whatever it is.
Right.
The last page, or the last half a page in each story, is about the transformational process and how that most terrible tragedy, as in my life, the terrible, incomprehensible tragedy of addiction, desperation, degradation, humiliation, self-abuse, self-flagellation, has turned in to being the greatest experience in my life. So, in other words, I can fully embrace that.
Right.
Okay, and many other experiences that, when I looked at them, they were the most terrible things that could have possibly happened. And retrospectively, they turned out to be the greatest. And I just want to finish up, and then we can get back to that. John Castanini was just in a movie with the Dalai Lama. 40 spiritual authors, John being one of them. The movie is called Discover the Gift. It is being released in June in the Northeast. They just had a premiere in California. We have now, with Thank God I, begun doing individual topic books The next book, which is halfway completed, is Thank God I'm an Empowered Woman. There are many.
I like that. That's got a more positive spin. I like that.
Very many famous women that have submitted their stories already. If anybody would like to follow up with me on this, you can reach me or send me an email at paul@thankgodi.com.
Got it? paul@thankgodi.com. Excellent. Excellent. This is a great book. You know, you're right. You know, change comes through adversities. And a lot of times adversities are heart-wrenching, you know, deaths, addictions, abuse. But such is life. You know, life is not easy. And, you know, the greatest things come out of horrible adversities.
Well, there's no question about it. You know, John, look, the secret to all of life, from the Dalai Lama to all spiritual gurus and leaders and people that create followings, okay, is counting your blessings.
Yeah.
No matter what. I mean, have you ever seen a blind person or a person with no arms? They had that thing going around the internet for a while about this guy who was dying and he did his last talk on the internet. And it got millions of views.
Right. I remember
because he says, well, I'm dying. You're right, I'm dying. But you know what? Right here today, I am fully alive. And I'm going to fully embrace today for what today is. Because that's all we have is right here and right now.
Paul, that's a great message, and you know our viewing audience can sure appreciate that message. My name is John Laus, and I want to give a plug to our product, Life Addictions. The recovery program has the Recovery Pod. It is a MP3 type player that's already downloaded with audio. You know, about 20 rehabs across the country use this for inpatient and outpatient. Paul, you know, I gave you several versions of this product.
I was going to interject and not let you do this whole thing yourself.
No, what do you
give me? The most incredible, without a shadow of a doubt, I took a bunch of these to New York with me last year, and some people raved about the results of the different tracks, the way it goes through it, the way it has been set up, and it's beyond a doubt. If there's anything that I can do to help get this further on the map, that would be my pleasure.
You know, it is so easy to listen to. Recovery is tough. I mean, recovery is really hard. And if you're in an addiction state, it's very hard to read a book or, you know, they've got books out there. Read this book, you can get cured. You know, I've been through addiction. And your mind is, you know, you just can't comprehend. You can't read. This product is amazing. And I tell you what, you can have the best product in the world, and it's still very difficult to sell. Well, we just discovered it's going to be a lot easier. It is now covered by health insurance. We have the health insurance codes. If you're a doctor, a psychiatrist, a counselor, if you're a rehab center, if you're an outpatient center, you can buy this product. You can put into your insurance company to get reimbursed. This product can help your clients. You know, it's very, you can multitask with it. It's got headphones, it's got a charger, it can be reused over and over again. It comes with a 4-page laminated guide. So you can get a little bit of a visual, but more importantly, you get the audio. So you get a recovery pod that's, and you know, the great thing about this is it's already downloaded. You don't have to burn anything on a computer. You don't have to do any of that stuff. You just open it up, turn it on, and hit play. We have one specifically for alcohol, one specifically for drugs. You can reach us at this following number. Please write it down if you have a loved one that might need this. 717-991-4755. 717-991-4755. Now covered by health insurance. We have all the paperwork, everything available for you to get reimbursed for this product, which makes it even easier.
That's beautiful to hear. That must be relatively new.
You know what? I just discovered this last month at a conference in Miami.
Beautiful.
And I have all the paperwork available, all the codes, a big breakthrough to our audience,
Fantastic.
the people out there.
I like the way that sounds.
Paul, give them another contact information so how they can get a hold of you.
The other way to get a hold of me is very simply. You can reach me on my 24-hour, 7-day-a-week telephone number, which is 954-646-9000. And If I don't answer it, I will be back to you immediately. And that's for any topic, whether it's an intervention, a life coach, whatever the case may be.
My name is John Laus. This is Life Addictions Recovery Program. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you, John. Appreciate it.
Okay.